Hello, thank you for joining us today. We have a great workshop planned for you. We're going to be doing some training specifically about NITRO purchasing, and we're going to be zeroing on approvals. So a lot of good content for you today, but before we dive into it, this will be a little bit more high level. So if you really want to get into the specific details for your account, of course, we're always here for you. Don't hesitate to reach out. And as we've said before, if you've been on our previous workshops, this is meant for you. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your requests. We put on these trainings and workshops to support you and to help you get more out of what we do. So don't be shy. Use that question box. And this will also be recorded. So if you'd like to reference this later, it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well as our website. And we also have a handout for you today. If you look at the very bottom of the GoToWebinar panel, you'll see a little section called handouts, and we have a handout for you there that you can check out. And James will explain that in just a moment as well. And speaking of James, of course, we are joined today by our resident expert on everything Nitro, James Restivo. And James has a whole bunch of new and fun things to share with us today. So without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and hand things over to James.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. Chris is right. We're going to talk about the purchasing application and the approvals and approval levels around it. I'm going to go ahead and make myself presenter to get going, although I like the nice slide that she has up. I'll just go ahead and make myself presenter anyway. Let's see here. Make sure I got the right application up. Apologize for that. And I will share my screen and get that going. So like Krista said, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to pop a note into that questions box. Krista will be taking a look at that, monitoring it, and she can chime in with any any questions that come up Krista, feel free to interrupt me at any time if someone has a question that we'd like to get to.
That's great.
So yeah, great. So so what I want to do is kind of walk through a couple different things. We are going to talk about the approvals piece of the purchase request program. Before we get into that, I did want to give you a quick overview. I see some of the folks on the call may not have purchase requests in their system yet. If you're looking to get this going for your organization, certainly feel free to reach out to our team to set up a demo. We can give you a detailed walkthrough of what it's all about. I'm going to give you a little bit more high level and really talk about what the approval levels look like, how they're done with custom actions and Nitro workflows, and then touch on how the Nitro Engage bot is incorporated into this as well. So a little bit of demo, a little bit of review, a little bit of training. So it's kind of a mixed bag here. But certainly feel free to participate and jump in if you feel you want to get something answered. Happy to get you answered. So just to give a quick overview of what purchase request program is all about, it's, as you might expect, you can have your users come in and submit a request to purchase something. Now, what they submit to purchase is entirely up to you. Now, you can scope it to a broad degree of lots of different things in your organization, from calculators and pencils and paper clips, to higher level things such as computers, laptops, cell phones, etc. And even broader, higher level things. If you want to have to set up a new suite of servers or buy laptops for a new office, it can be used for a variety of purposes. And one of the great things about it is that it is in your 365, so you don't have to pay any additional licensing for this application, other than the license cost to us. But it's one flat rate for everyone, right? So it's not a per user cost, is what I mean. It's a flat rate for it. And what we found with a lot of our customers is that they're using some kind of ERP system like a Dynamics or an SAP, and anyone who submits a purchase request through those programs needs a license. And as you might imagine, for a company with 100, 150, 200 plus people, those license costs go up substantially very quickly. So a lot of folks have come to us to say, hey, can you run through the purchase request piece in SharePoint? And then the team's touch point as well, and then kick it over to our ERP system for POs and fulfillment and whatnot? And the answer is yes, absolutely. We've done that for a few organizations now, and we've got a few more we're working towards. We've integrated with SAP, Dynamics, NetSuite, a few things like that. So we've got that going. If that's your scenario, we've got you covered. We got the purchase request program for the approval piece of it that's running through your 365 Teams and email and Outlook, and then it's going up to your ERP if you need it to. Otherwise, we have a full-fledged purchase order piece of this. I'm not going to touch on it today, but just kind of let you know about it. There is a purchase order piece to the program as well that you could run through the whole PO and fulfillment process right through this application itself without even needing an ERP system. And again, if you needed to connect over to some other financial tool on the back end, we can certainly look at doing that. That's one of the things we do well is integrations with other tools. We've done a lot of them because we know your entire world is not 365. There's other pieces of the organization that need to have their own applications and whatnot. So we definitely address that as well. But just real quickly to give you an overview of the form of what we're looking at is you have really just basic information about what type of purchase is it going to be, what's the department, perhaps who the purchasing agent is, what's the type of purchase, and like a lot of our systems, a lot of this is very configurable to your needs. So if you have a different set of types of purchases, you can certainly run through a totally different set of types of purchases. Or if you want run approvals by department, you can run approvals by department. If you want to do it by location, we can do it by location. And that's one of the things we'll talk about when we get to the approval levels piece is how you can set up even different criteria than what we have out of the box to run those approval levels. So it's got the it's basic information at the top, sort of the wrapper, the header, I don't know what you call it, the cover letter, I guess you could say, more or less. And then you have your purchase request details, where this can go and point to like I said, a full-fledged catalog of all sorts of items, or it could be a targeted list of items with certain categories, maybe just hardware, maybe just office supplies, or a mixed bag of the two. And then with the catalog set up in the system, you can have it, use the filtering and pick a particular hardware asset or pick a particular office supply. And you can see when you have that, you do have some information that's pre-populated, right? So the price, maybe there's a vendor that you have. So kind of pre-populate some of that. You tell it how many items you want. You can give it an accounting code to help drive the reconciliation on the back end. So all that can be done through here. Purchase item, save it, add it to your item. So I'll just go ahead and add buy one share. I only need one share. It's only me. I'm going to buy one share. And then you can add more items, right? So you can have as many items as you want under one purchase request. So you typically, maybe want to have, it depends what the purchase order is going to be or who you're sending the purchase order to. You're probably going to want to limit your purchase request to items from one particular vendor, or like you would any other request or any other purchase order. But totals it up, gives you a number at the bottom, and that can help drive those approvals as well. And then you can hit that submit for approval button, and now the fun starts. Now that your approvers get notified, and now they come in and record their decisions and how that all operates. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to pop open this purchase request handout I put here, the approval process, just kind of walk you through what that looks like as far as the flow. Now this is high level in a sense of it touch on the high points, but within each of these actions that you see down here, these workflows and custom actions, there's going to be some other actions in there. There's maybe a couple of script actions, a few other query list actions. So it doesn't capture everything that the system's doing, but it does capture the flow of how it goes when you get a purchase request submitted into the system. It invokes a workflow, which is this approval process for a normal flow. It checks the approval levels, and it checks to see if there's any approval levels found. It's going to read the approval level, see who the approver should be, assign them a task. That person will get a notification either through Teams or through email or both. And then they can take action, either to deny it, approve it, or send it back for more information. And so each of those, has its own process. When it's denied, it's going to set the approver task to denied, and it's going to send a notification to the requester that the submitter that their request was denied. And that's the endpoint of that process. If it's approved, of course, it'll go through and set the task to approve. And then what it does is checks to see if there's another approval level. So this is where it gets good as far as the flexibility of it, because you could have as many levels as you want. You're not restricted to 1, 2, or 3, or even 10. You can have 20 levels of approval, though that'd be kind of crazy. You might want to rethink your process if you're doing 20 levels of approval, but you could if you wanted to. And you could go through, it goes back through, checks again, is there another approval level, creates the approver task, that person makes their decision, et cetera, et cetera. So it goes through that until all the levels have been hit for the criteria on the request, and then it goes and checks again, says, nope, no more approval levels found, we're gonna mark it as approved, assuming everyone's approving it. Then of course, at any point in the process, the approver could send it back for more information, which then has a kind of a separate process it works through to send it back. The user can resubmit that request, and then it goes through a similar but slightly different process, and then kicks back into this loop again of checking the approval level, is there another approver, and then approving it once everything is done. So I want to give you that as a handout because I don't want to keep this on my screen the whole time. So if you want to download it and take a look at it and refer to it as we're going through here, you're more than welcome to do so to help you understand what we're talking about, how the process is flowing. So I wanted to talk about that flow, and then I'm going to talk about the approval levels. Now, this is where you can get a detailed indication of what approval process, which route that approval should go through. And you can see we have some information on here that that's going to be queried, right? So what happens is, just to show you real quick on the custom actions, no, it's on the workflow side. Let's cancel this real quick. So this workflow, this approval process for normal flow, which is the kind of the I would say more or less the guts of it. I mean, there's other flows that come around this, and there's other things related to it, but this is kind of the guts of the actual approval process, where it comes in, it checks the approval levels, it gets the approval level from that approval levels list, and then run some other tests to check some things, and then it's going to do some updates and create tasks and whatnot. But to get the approval level, what it's doing is it's doing this query list where it's going out to that approval levels list we have over here and looking at certain pieces of information like department, type of purchase, and the amount. And it's going to look at, is the amount less than or equal to the total cost of the approval level. And then it's going to run through that and then check the level, and then create the task if there's a matching approval level associated with this. So essentially what happens is it comes through and it says, okay, here's a type of purchase. It's a general type of purchase, and it could be any one of these 4 types of purchases for this process. It's a general type of purchase. It's it has to be approved by this person no matter what. Our approver, this is actually a person in our demo account. So CCS sales demo. So that's an actual person. So this is a person in a group field. So you can pull, and you see these approvers. So you could put 1 or more people at each level of approval if needed. It's going to check the department and match the department as well to see if the department is, that's the department it was submitted through. It'll look at the level, obviously level 1. And then it's going to set the due date for that approval. So this is the typical days, hours, minutes, seconds setup we have. So this is 3 days. That person has 3 days to respond to that approval before it's overdue, and we can set up some other notifications to go out around that being overdue. So it runs through it, creates the task, notifies CCS sales demo, the person here. And again, that can happen through email and or Teams. And then that goes back to the system, to that approval flow, to see if there's another level once this person has approved it. So they click approve, then it goes to level 2. Same thing, it'll check to see if it meets the criteria, and then it'll send it through. And then it'll go through it one more time and check level 3. So this is kind of good the way we have it set up now, because I can explain what kind of happens in different scenarios. So let's say it was submitted for IT, a hardware purchase for IT. for instance, and it's $10,000. So what's going to happen is it's going to do level 1 approval because IT is here, and then it's going to actually skip level 2 and go straight to level 3 approval because IT is not here in level 2. So you can actually have more granular approval processes like that where you can say, okay, it's going to, for HR, for sales, for payroll, for all those departments, it has to go through these 3 levels because maybe the payroll manager wants to approve everything that's going through, but the IT manager doesn't care and just goes directly to the CIO, for instance. Things like that. You could have that kind of differentiation of approval processes where you have one department has one process, but a different department has another process, but it's actually set up very similarly. You could also just set up different level 1s for each grouping here, right? Because really, in practice, the approver is going to be different. So they likely would have a different row, a different record here for each level 1. And again, there's no limit on the number of level 1s that you have. There's no limit on the number of level 2s. All you're doing is saying, this is the criteria for triggering that approval level, and you're putting that information into the approval levels list. And it's like anything. It's got a form, very easy to fill out. Give it a title, select your type of purchase, you select your departments, and what the amount should be, right? So if it's if this is less than the amount of that's being purchased, it'll trigger that approval level. If it's above the amount being purchased, it won't consider it, right? Because it's not going to need that. And the name doesn't really matter. You can give it an approval level name, just something to allow you to remember it, and what it's for, what the purpose is. And then you're going to put your level in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is from a number standpoint. Then you identify your approvers. But then here's an interesting thing here, request approvers. This is a setup where you can have the end user identify who the approvers are through the form itself, right? So we have our form over here. Let me just go ahead and open this up again. You could have a field on here that allows the end user to identify the approver. So that could be really useful for large organizations where it might be hard to maintain all sorts of level 1s. Maybe across the organization, there's multiple locations in different countries. And I've seen this in action where there's different approvers for each location, and we don't want to manage who those level 1 approvers are across 20 locations, 30 locations. So what they allow their users to do is actually identify who the approver should be, at least for the level 1 piece of it. And then if they want to identify for level 2 or level 3, you could put that in here as well. Each one has a different field. And the way that works is that you have, you identify that field over here. So you could have the person put in who the level 1 approver is in a field called level 1 approver. You could call obviously whatever you want, but it's, as long as you refer to the column internal name here, it'll pick up the person in that field, generate the approval task for them. And in that case, you can leave this field blank. You don't have to enter an approver up here. So you come in and identify the column name, and then that's going to be the column name on the purchase request form that the person is filling out. Now, of course, you got to trust your users, pick the right people. That's more of a training issue, but that's how that's supposed to work. And then you've got your due hours, and that's going to set how long it's going to be. There could also be, this is kind of another way you could do the dynamic approval of the level is through identifying the manager field. So you can see here we have manager identified as a request approved by, and that could be the another thing. So it's just going to pick the person's manager and assign the task to them. So they got the different granularity there of who to choose as an approver. So whether it's you identify it at the level itself, whether you want the person to identify it at the time of creation, or how you want to do it. So you got those options there for creating the approval levels. Now, of course, within this, because it is a workflow, it's a NITRO workflow, it has a lot of possibilities for changing things around. You can change your fields that it relies on for determining who gets the approval. So there's a few things, obviously a few steps you need to take to make that happen. First of all, you'd want to make sure whatever field is you're going to use as your criteria is going to be over here on your purchase request form. So you want to, let's say it's location and department. So you can add a location, whether that's maybe region, you could use region field and have that be north, south, east, west, or it could be Europe, APAC, South America, LATAM, whatever you want to put in there as your region. And then you can have a department within that region. And then, so you add that to your form over here on this, the NITRO form. And then you want to make sure you add it over here as well onto your approval levels list, so you can map it to the chain of levels that approvals that need to go through. And then ultimately you want to come back over here to the query list action where we're looking at and make sure you add it in. So you want to add a condition and say, okay, it's region, and it's going to be equal to region. So use the same kind of formatting here. You already have it. I laid out for you, so you just copy and paste. In a similar way, if you didn't want one of these levels, if you want to say, you know what, I'm not going to worry about the type of purchase, like that doesn't matter to me. It's going to go through this process. Who cares what type of purchase it is? Delete it. Just go ahead and remove it. So you can leave type of purchase in the form, you can leave it in the approval levels list, but if you remove it from here, it's not going to consider type of purchase for that approval. So it's a couple ways you can change that around. You can add criteria, you can remove criteria. So that's how you would do that. And that's pretty simple. That's not going to impact much of anything else to do it the way I just described, because what we're doing is ultimately telling the system which approval level does it need to grab to create that task for that person. So that's where the layout of this approval. You do want to, if you are going to make a change like that, just for completeness sake, we have this approval process for normal flow, and I mentioned in the brief overview of the handout, there's also an approval process for send back flow for when a item is sent back. There's a few other, it's kind of a few different things we need to do. Basically, essentially cancel out the tasks that were created and kind of wipe the slate clean. Essentially, is what we're doing with this one. But it does have a very similar layout. It's got that get approval level over here. So you do want to make sure you change it over here as well in the case that you have any items that are ultimately sent back. So there's that. So a few places you need to change it to make it work, and then it'll go through. Now, if you wanted to reassign tasks, that was another thing I had mentioned as a possibility here. There is a reassign button on the approver task, and just to maybe I kind of went through it in brief, but maybe to talk about in more detail what actually happens over here. Once it gets the approval, it creates the task, and so there's going to be an approver tasks list. And we have over here, I don't know if I have any assigned to me, but I can pull up the field and the form and show you what it is. So you don't have a way to create tasks. The system creates the tasks for you. And by design, the task is limited to only being updated by the person who's logged in. And we handle that through some security rules around the form. And on the form itself, on that approver task form, you're going to have the approver is going to have these options to approve, deny, or send back, or reassign. Each one of these is limited to the person to whom that approver task is assigned. So when they're assigned a task, no one else can update that task. And that's by design in here. But if you ever needed to, let's say that person's out, you probably want to put in some kind of administrative override. Right now, out of the box, it does not have that administrative override, but you could put that in here and say match any, and then you could add a user. Say I'm just going to put myself in there, and now the person, the person who is the approver will be the one who can do it, who can reassign it. But now I've also allowed James or Steve log in to reassign that task. So that could be useful in case there's people out of the office, and then you could just reassign that task. But ultimately, I in practice, I would recommend having multiple approvers in that approval levels list. So if we come back over here, to approval levels, I would actually recommend having multiple approvers in here. So that way, maybe person A is the person who always approves it, but person B is the backup. They'll get the notification, they'll know those approvals are going through, but they don't actually have to do anything until, unless person A is not there. So that's how that would work for the either reassigning it for a backup or just having it set up in here for backup all the time. And then what I wanted to talk about next, if there's, well, let me just ask, any questions at this point, Krista, anything coming through?
Nothing so far. I think you've blown everyone's mind. I do I do see one hand up, so maybe we could take that question.
Let me see. Hand up. Who's got a hand up?
It's like
All right.
Catherine.
Yeah, let's see. Well, she put up a while ago. Catherine, do you still want to ask your question? You can type it in, or I don't know, maybe take the hand down so I can. Not sure how to get to it. Or you can put it in chat, I suppose. Oh, she does have a question. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and read that? Oh.
All right.
Oh, she said.
Can you put
Group.
it in a group instead of people?
That's a good question. So in the approvers field, I assume you're talking about there. That's a great question. I believe you can. I think it is able to accept a group. And I think it has to be a SharePoint group. I believe it can also be an AD group if you use, if you're in, obviously in 365. I don't think you can do this in on-premises yet, but if you're in 365, there is a Azure AD API connection that we have as part of our NITRO site settings. And you'd have to enable the read permission on that to read the group. So NITRO won't be able to read the AD security group unless you have that permission enabled to read from Active Directory. So I believe you could do both. I'll double check and follow up with you, but I'm pretty sure you could do SharePoint group and the AD security group with that permission enabled for the approval process. That's a great question, but yeah, I believe that is correct. Okay, great. Let's see. It looks like there might have been follow up here.
Yeah, so it looks like, so AD or SharePoint, if you have the connector.
That's right. Yeah, so you can do either one with that permission enabled under site settings. But yeah, I can follow up with you afterwards and talk about that in more detail. Great. Yeah, so that's a great question. Yeah, you can have multiple approvers here in the group or just directly laid out as people in the approvers field. Okay, great. So another thing I wanted to touch on was the NITRO Engage piece of this and how that operates. And we have well, actually I didn't run the bot ahead of this demo, so I apologize. Might be a little wonky. Usually takes a minute to wake up and doesn't always give me exactly what I want unless I've tested it. But let me see here. NITRO. See, perhaps. Okay, we might have. I don't see it on. That's interesting. I don't see it on here anymore. So all right, I'll have to check in with that my team. But what I can do is show you from not from within Teams itself, but from within our AI settings. This is in NITRO Studio. We kind of have a default set of commands. So our NITRO Engage bot is a command and response bot essentially, where you have type in a query or type in the word commands and it's going to pull back some information. That ties, if you click on what comes back, if it's an adaptive card, you can click on it and it's going to run a workflow, which can then do something else, which can then post back to the card to the teams, which can then go do something else. So you can cascade your actions like that and set up things where you have your command that's in the bot, in the app in Teams pop up. You run an action and it's going to kick off a workflow, which is then going to respond in Teams. So there's a setup around that. It's yeah, I've had some workshops on it. We've talked about that, but if you want more details, certainly let me know. But ultimately, the idea is that you're going to have the approver mainly, not necessarily the submitter, although they can come in and look at things, I believe. But the approver mainly is going to get that notification. Now, I mentioned they can get it through email, but they can also get it through Teams, and they can actually approve it through Teams. So if you have something like this, so you have your My Approval tasks, for instance, and you click the buttons, or you pull it up and you click a button on your task, it's going to display the approval task adaptive card. Now, if you come back over here to workflows, we have this display approval task adaptive card, and then that's in this is what you're going to see as far as what gets posted. So we have this post an adaptive card action, and it's going to, you send the recipient as the assigned to, that's on the approver tasks list, and then you have some information about that approval, whether it's the name of the title of that approval, which is probably going to be similar to the purchase request title, what level it's at, here's a related purchase request, you put some description in there, and then on that tab you have, or on that card that pops up, you have these actions at the bottom, so you can approve, deny, or send back right from within Teams itself. And if they approve it, you see it's going to generate a workflow. I don't think for some reason this is not attached to a workflow, but it could be attached to a workflow that manages the approval piece of it. See, deny. Oh, none of them are attached to workflows. That's interesting. Oh, you know what happens actually? Once you approve it, it updates the task itself, which then kicks off another workflow. So there doesn't have to be another workflow here. So you approve it, that change of the approval decision on the approver task fires off the workflow, which will then invoke the other workflow, which will then check to see if there's any approval levels left. So if you go back to that handout over here, when they hit approve, what's really happening is it's setting that approver task to approve, and now it's kicking off the workflow. So that's what's happening in the bot. So instead of doing it through custom actions on the NITRO form, they're doing it through the bot and clicking approve and changing that task, and it's going back through to the decision, then kicking back through to the process that you see on here. So just another way to interact with it, another way to engage with your users for easy managing of their tasks, right? So they don't have to go into SharePoint, they don't have to dig through their emails, they can just come into Teams. They'll have this usually pop up pretty quickly, and they can make their decision pretty quickly. And I find those adaptive cards, because I use them internally for various purposes, they really work. I mean, it's like a Teams message. It's like a team notification for chat from another individual. Pops up in your Teams, and it gives you the information you need, and then you can take action right directly on there without leaving the context of Teams. Of course, if you want to, you could always click over, look at the request, make sure it has what it needs on it, and then make your decision. But you don't have to necessarily take the action through the NITRO form in SharePoint. You can do it through Teams. So that's how you can do that setup of the, let's leave that open, the tasks, the setup of the approval levels, the setup of the approve and deny. There's some level of flexibility there as far as what criteria the system is going to be looking for to create those approver tasks. And so you have control over that in the approval levels list. Again, if you want to make a change, there's a few steps you have to take to get it to read that next criteria, but it's really not that hard. It's pretty simple to set it up. It just got to make sure you add it to the form, add it to your approvals list, levels list, and then update the workflow to recognize that it's going to be looking for that new criteria to determine the approval level. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of options, a lot of possibilities there. So certainly, certainly a lot you can do with the product, and a lot you can do with it, with setting up those approvals. But yeah, that's pretty much all I had to cover on this topic today. So if you wanted to set up if you want to set up a demo of some kind to go through it in more detail, see how the PO piece works, how it automatically generates that PO once the PR is approved, how that fulfillment process works, or if you just want to get more details about the purchase request process itself, we're certainly happy to set up a conversation anytime. You know, if you're interested in this or any of the other products we offer, we can certainly set up something at any time for you guys to take a look. But that pretty much covers it. And you know, I thank you all for joining today. Krista, anything else you wanna add?
No, I think that's great. I really appreciate you walking through all of this for us today, and hope everyone got as much out of this as I did. And also, we do have our next workshop. It'll be in a couple weeks from today. So you can kind of dog ear that on your calendar, and that'll be with our NITRO Studio updates. Right, James?
Yeah, yeah. Well, to be determined. Just
Mhm.
I'll get together with you on an update on what we're going to cover, whether it's Nitro Studio updates or another topic. But
Okay.
I'll get that info.
All right. So more coming your way, everyone, and appreciate everyone for joining us today. And
Yeah,
thank you
same
so
thing.
much, James, for walking us through.
Sure. You know, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.